Welcome back to Hi-Fi Rush with another wardrobe change. Specifically, a return of everyone's favorite.
Yes! Okay, video of the entire session. I think we've achieved all that we need to now.
Also, 808's a Shiba Inu now.
So it was 808's plan all along.
So, we're doing one last little check over like my current chip loadout, getting things ready for the content to come, because we are now at the point where there is still more to show in Hi-Fi Rush, specifically content that was released after this game had come out, like several months during the summer, and it all has to do with this arcade machine, the arcade challenge update.
Yeah, I've seen
two
this
brand new game modes
on and off. I think it showed up maybe like halfway through the playthrough.
Like the in-game notice that the arcade update content was available showed up immediately after we finished the main game, because that's just kind of how it is now. But we got two modes to choose from: Power Up, Tower Up, and BPM Rush. The latter we're going to focus on first, because I'd rather save like the better one for later. But before then, as an incentive to play these modes, there are a total of like 40 special challenges, 20 for each of the modes, that all require you to like meet their requirements. And what do you get as a reward? Well, by acquiring X amount of points at like various in various stages, various thresholds, as you can see with that completion percentage up there, is that you will get extra bonuses like accessories for like customizing your character's appearances, as well as extra photo mode stuff, which, oh yeah, by the way, I completely forgot to mention, yeah, there's a photo mode in this game. But I feel like at this point, it's been so long since like the PS4 was ever a thing, like first came out, and like we started seeing the beginnings of like, you know, of giving people the option to actually like take pictures of what they're doing in game and share it with others. That, yeah, like, why wouldn't most games these days, or at least like very notable high-profile ones, not have a photo mode?
Most big, graphically impressive ones will have photo mode at the very least.
Yeah, this one at least is like, it's a photo mode that allows you to set up some pretty funny venues and whatnot. But here's what BPM Rush is about. It is basically an experiment to show how slow you can make combat, and then escalate it to how fast you can make combat before it gets out of hand. Because we are starting at 135 BPM, which is, I believe, technically slower than even the slowest song is in the main game of Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
Like, the idea from what like John Johannes and the team basically talked about, like their ideas behind, you know, the whole update was, again, to like kind of demonstrate what like the bottom and high limits of like acceptable BPM for gameplay is. Like, for context, what they described with like the music tracks in the main game is that I forget what the lowest one actually is, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere over 140. But as far as like the fastest song that's available in the main game, I believe it's like in the 170 range.
And so that with like it went up to like 200 or 180.
Yeah, well, for this mode specifically, what makes it special is that you get BPMs that are higher than that, like clocking in at like 185 and ultimately 200. But the way it works in BPM Rush, how you proceed through it, is that it's not like Rhythm Tower, you know? It's not the sort of thing where like there's a fixed amount of enemies that you then have to like eliminate and do it on a time limit. Instead, what you have to do is fill up that bottom meter where it shows you the BPM readouts. You fill it up so that it's all maxed out at green, kill an enemy when it is maxed out, and you will like basically access what will be like the true final enemy of that floor. Which, in that case, was the Chemno, a new enemy which we technically saw the carcass of all the way back in Track 8 during like the museum
I remember you
trip.
mentioning that. There's a few enemies that show up in the bonus content that weren't in the main game.
Yes.
Or that
like
were hinted at, I should say.
Yeah, because Rhythm Tower, you saw like the reskins of the various like Saber and Elite units. You know, the gold-covered Elite, as well as like the crash test dummies, and even the sunbathing Saber got a bonus appearance. But these ones Like, the Chemno was obviously hinted at by, like, showing, like, its remains kind of, like, in the back corridors of the museum. But there is one more brand new enemy as well that is, like, an ultimate version of a previous one. Because as you can see, like, as you saw with that Chemno, it looked very similar to the other quadruped robots that we had fought up to this point. It's just blue and has other tricks of its own that will become much more apparent as we go on, because I was only able to, like, jump on that thing at 135 BPM because it was the very first thing.
Yeah. Now,
and that's the second new
enemy. Bot is a new enemy.
Yeah, second new enemy is here. The SHIN Brut-1L. Yeah. Something even greater than the red-colored, like, the red custom Brut-1L.
Well, blacks are the black-colored ones are elite.
Yes.
Swiftly correcting myself there, just to make sure.
And you want to know what makes these extra deadly? Is that the SHIN Brut-1L and the Chemno, their rhythm parry attacks are actually randomized.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Like, when it comes to, like, the Chemno specifically, I didn't show it the first time, but you'll see it later, as well as see me fail it, because it is actually that difficult. Like, they're only, you know, it's only a sequence of 3 hits, thankfully, but it can be any combination of dodges or parries. For the Chemno, you only have to do, like, 1 volley of, like, 3 hits that you have to match. But the SHIN Brut-1L, as you saw, it'll do 2, like, in a row. Like, so it's basically a total of 6. But everything's still getting faster all the same. It's funny when you play BPM Rush, because of how it starts out so slow, it's somehow, like, even more disorienting to get into the rhythm of compared to when it actually gets to its absolute fastest.
I was going to say that, yeah, because if you're getting into this in the post-game, then you're automatically, you know, you're attuned to playing at a faster speed, so having to hamper yourself in order to deal with the slower BPM is going to take a bit of adjustment. Yeah.
That's definitely the case, but at least, like, this is definitely, like, a good example, at least with, like, this post-game content, that it's basically following off on what was clearly being shown all the way back in Rhythm Tower, where there's a lot more willingness to, like, experiment with actually challenging enemy compositions, especially when you get to more of, like, these final, like, the actual end waves of each individual, like, BPM floor.
Yeah. Well, at this point, they know that everyone who's likely to be playing this, odds are they know the game inside and out. At least well enough to have beaten the game, so naturally, you know, shifting everything up a couple of levels, pretty much the only way to go.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's obviously still kind of a shame that, you know, like, you can't get this same level of, like, remixed enemy composition in the main game, but, I mean, like, I've already made as much of a point already about, like, how, like, that is, like, the biggest thing that, like, this game lacks compared to, like, other action games that have been doing it for decades at this point.
Yeah, like a remix or a shuffle mode.
Yeah, you know, the same thing that, like, you know, the DMC established all the way back in 2001.
Yeah. Well, they said that they have a lot of interesting plans for the sequel, so fingers crossed that they, you know, just get straight wacky with it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even with, like, the whole BPM Rush concept, I was actually thinking about it. It was like one of those random, like, car moments as I was, like, driving to and from work. You know, that is, like, the second best place to have, like, random thoughts of, like, seconds in the shower. But like, I was actually thinking about it in the context of, like, what I always remembered most from my time playing DDR and various B-Money rhythm games is that you always get those occasional songs when you play them where they'll have variable BPMs. Like parts of the song will be at a certain speed, but then as part of, like, a, you know, a middle section or something, it might gradually change, or it might just, like, do a hard shift to a lower or higher speed. And I was honestly thinking about how sick would it be in the sequel if you had, like, a special enemy or even a boss whose, like, song and everything was something that had variable BPM, and, like, the slower BPM when it hits would basically be, like, its own attack. Because that's basically what it feels like. If you got hit with, like, an attack that reduces your speed to 135 BPM or lower, that's basically a debuff.
Or, thinking about it, an enemy that has its own version of bullet time.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
Except it's used on you, and you're having to suddenly deal with the fact that it's attacking much faster, and you're having to time your attacks, at half speed.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of other things that I would, hope for, but obviously just the idea of, experimenting with, having to deal with, more frequent changes in BPM would be definitely a good start, because they've already established this much. Having a gradual, it's a gradual enough ramp up in speed as the game goes on that, you don't think about it in the moment. But when you look back through it, you're like, oh yeah, some songs were actually faster than others. And it kind of didn't matter as much because, it was still within, the right level of speed to help let you be comfortable with the rhythm. But now we're at the part where we have broken past the upper limit of what was an acceptable BPM in the main game. We're at 185. And
this is pod racing.
Yeah, this is definitely the sort of thing where it presents its own challenges, in complete opposite to having to fight at 135 BPM for obvious reasons, because now you're having to it's with the previous speeds, it was the sort of thing where I'd gotten so used to playing the game for months by the point that this update came out that I was I could keep my focus on both what enemy was in front of me and what combo I was doing, while also keeping enough focus on the rhythm assist metronome to make sure that I was still on beat. 185 and 200 BPM, I think, was the first time in a while where I suddenly felt pressured that I have to focus on just one thing at a time. I cannot, rely on the rhythm assist as much as I would need to find my footing. I just have to feel it out.
Can't be switching willy-nilly between enemies quite like you used to.
Yeah, or really just keeping as many important information in my periphery, because the rhythm assist that you see at the bottom that I kept up for the entire LP has been very helpful, both for my own sense of rhythm and consistency, but also as described as a bit of inside baseball. It's helped a lot in syncing up all the various video segments when I had to restart a checkpoint or something. Just finding very clever edit points. But at least here, probably the best thing to always keep in mind when you have to fight at this speed is that if you have not gotten it through your head that you should be constantly using your calling in your assists at all times, just having them overwhelm the enemy like it's a fucking TOD combo in Marvel, is you're doing it wrong.
Scoops, baby, scoops.
You want to learn how to do a fucking infinite? Alas, there is no true way to do an infinite in this game. It ultimately just kind of depends on how much reverb gauge you have at up to that point that you can get the longest jam combo possible.
But I did notice that Macaron has sort of an orangey costume, so you can dress him up like the Mango Sentinel.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still some costumes that I've still left some of the characters on for obvious reason, while still mixing up some of them. Mostly Corsica, because I like her cyberpunk outfit. That's one of my other favorites. But Macaron, I guess that's one minor thing I'll just say about how I feel about the costume options for all the characters, that I do think Macaron's might be the one that is most lacking.
Yeah. All the others have redesigns to some degree, whereas his just seem more like plain recolors.
There are different costumes ultimately. I think just more the bigger issue is that there's only so much I think you could do with certain costumes. At least they felt that there was only so much they could do, because they have to make something that looks good with his gigantic frame.
Yeah, that's also always going to be a problem.
Because there's ones where it's he looks like one where he looks like a he's in high school, he's got the
varsity jacket.
Yeah, the varsity jacket. There's one where he looks like he's a fucking KISS member. I mean, some of them would look especially silly, but and I guess that's the main thing, because I feel like the character who deserves the most silly costumes, and I think ultimately still does get them, is Cinnamon. Anyway, that was the rhythm attack of the Chem, though, and at 200 BPM, it's a nightmare.
Oh, Jesus.
I just give up at this. I give up at this point. It was the sort of thing where, I shit you not, the first time I had to deal with it when the arcade update came out, it was after I had a brief sort of break from playing the game after I 100%ed everything, it made me worry. I was unsure whether or not, like, did my timing go bad, or did an update fuck up with, like, the latency on the game that, like, it's not, that, like, when I press the button, it is activating later than it's supposed to. Yeah. I think it's more just the simpler thing. It's like, it's just too goddamn fast to keep track of. That's actually the one thing where it is, like, I think I was only able to get around it on the higher BPMs with that enemy when I just focused my absolute everything on looking at the rhythm assist metronome and just paid attention to the audio cues, because the parry and dodge icons have their own sound effects. But there's more to BPM Rush.
Oh, yeah. No.
yeah, that was easy. Normal is just the same thing, but they hit harder. But EX mode, I will say this is the only content in all of Hi-Fi Rush in which I still, to this day, have never gotten an S rank, and I am simply leaving it at that.
Yeah, no, I entirely understand.
Because what happens is that you start at 185 BPM for the first floor, and then it goes up to 200. But this mode, EX mode, is 7 floors, so the remaining 6 are all at 200 BPM. But the difference is that from floors 2 to 7 at 200 BPM, the damage that enemies deal to you gets like a 0.2 like increase to its multipliers, so that eventually you're ending on 200 BPM with enemies dealing double damage.
Yeah, no, that can go fuck itself into an empty well.
Also, you can't use chips that are designed to, like, give you healing items on parry.
I noticed that, yeah. It says something like, healing via chips is disabled?
Yes. The only way you can get health, though, guaranteed, is what we saw when I demonstrated the Rhythm Tower. It's always good to have pick-me-up in your second slot. Now, I just need to not give this fucking Chemno the time of day, because at 185 BPM, it is so scary. Like, it does things, like, as far as enemy behaviors, that also highlights as much that I do think Tango ultimately needs to have, like, a better mind to, like, kind of address this in like, the next game or anything else they do in the future, where, like, they have a solid grasp on, like a varied enemy roster. But I think if there's one thing that like the DLC enemies or like the post-game enemies like this actually show, is that they don't do enough in terms of like real tricky varied behavior patterns that try to like keep you honest with some of like your strategies. Because what the Chemno has is that if you do the magnet backstab move where you press the button again to vault over their back, they have a specific move designed to counter that.
Oh, that is really sneaky.
You can parry it or just time dodge it out of the way, thankfully, you know. It's not a thing where it's like it punishes you immediately in a way that you can't get out of, but it's the sort of thing where it's like if you're doing the backstab, you got to remember that attack will come, so you got to be prepared with your next move. Which I appreciate that. And it's the sort of thing where, like, yeah, after all the other enemies of this game just basically being chumped on with that backstab move, it's like some of them could stand to have like a bit more variance in their behavior and other attacks to, you know, just like keep you more on your toes. It really is just kind of like the ultimate dilemma, I feel, with like a lot of action games these days, where it's just, especially if it's something original, it's the tricky balance of finding out is like how much is enough for like creating a new game and like not pushing it so far that like it kind of alienates people from being able to learn it. But on the other hand, if you like play it too safe, you know, you're not gonna make anything that like really satisfies your core audience until you actually understand what worked in the first place, and then put out like a post-release batch of content that addresses it.
I mean, it's always the problem. A lot of games, especially anything involving online play these days, have of you know, you've got the very loud minimal group who are like, we want this more difficult, we want to sweat, we want to blah blah blah. Meanwhile, you've got pretty much everyone else is like, yeah, we just want to have fun.
Yeah, and I mean, like,
increasing the depth of it is good for everyone, But a lot of the games these days just seem to go, okay, well, we'll just turn the numbers up and make it unplayably hard for everyone but the 3% of people that can actually do it.
Yeah. And again, like, it always goes back to, as well, like, why I wish there was the enemy remix mode for this game, because it would absolutely have made, like, added an extra fun, and, like, especially for me, as someone that, like, still treats Ninja Gaiden Black as basically, like, the platonic ideal of action games, you know?
Yeah.
Like, every playthrough on each difficulty has something that's worthwhile in how different it is.
Yeah.
There's only because
it's your sacred cow, basically.
Oh yeah, well, pretty much. Like, I mean, that goes without saying. And even then, the funny thing with mentioning Ninja Gaiden Black specifically is that, you know, everyone mentions that as if that's, like, the only Ninja Gaiden game that matters, but it's so often easy, I think, for people to forget that there was just a vanilla version of Ninja Gaiden that came out, like, a year and a half before it. Yeah. But it's because of that and it's, like, DLC content with the Hurricane packs that it basically did what this game did with its arcade update. You know, it was new remix stuff that actually pushed things forward for the dedicated players. And then the ultimate reward was to put together an ultimate package afterwards that, you know, for a lot of people, did basically supplant that original release to the point where it's seen as the original.
Well, it's like
it's kind of like a fortunate situation they got in, especially because of how it still pushes some things with, like, enemy remixes and, like, difficulty variances way harder than I think even the Devil May Cry games have ever done.
Yeah, it's like with Evil Dead, you know, everyone knows it was the first one, but no one ever tells you to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it always goes straight to Evil Dead 2 because they remember the goofy shit.
Yeah, go back and watch the first one if you want, but this is where you start.
Yeah, I mean there's some things that might be a bit rough. I don't know. I forget if I'm misremembering this or if it was true. Something about, like, a tree sodomizing one of the girls.
Oh, yeah, the tree rape scene. Yeah, that was in the second one and kept it from being... immediately put it on the Video Nasties release in the UK. Kept it from being legally released over here for about 10 years.
I know I was mixing something up. I just know that, like, for all, like, the campy, goofy shit and, like, you know, Bruce Campbell being the star, you forget that there's some real disgusting shit in those movies.
There is a similar scene in the first one, but again, everyone remembers the sequel.
Yeah, like you're gonna pass up on This Is My Boomstick.
Yeah, that was Army of Darkness, third one.
Oh right, yeah. Well, yeah.
Third one is the one that has Ashes. Everyone knows them.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, because of, like, the increase in campiness, they always did. They kind of blend together for me after a point because they clearly figured out that was what made Evil Dead, like, so distinct from all the other horror stuff of the era.
The second one is the. It's the revered one. The third one is the one you put on if you just want to sit and watch a fun movie, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, a lot of Evil Dead talk as we are desperately trying to survive fighting at this speed. I will say, like, kind of the silver lining of having 6 floors of just BPM at its maximum level is that because you have to spend so much time at that speed on EX mode, it does mean you have more time to get used to it than you do during the main mode. Yeah,
I can imagine playing through this a couple of times and then going back to the base game and being like, this is a breeze.
Yeah, in fact, both a breeze and, again, that disorienting feeling where it's like you just want to press the buttons faster than you're supposed to. But I guess the other thing as well, because I had brought up, like, the subject of, like, Bimani games, you know, because, like, those are really games that have been known to, like, do some real insane fucking shit, like pushing, like, music speeds and, like, and challenges that effect. Like, when I got to this and saw that, like, BPM RUSH was a thing, I couldn't help but be reminded of my earliest DDR memories and just the first time I had discovered Max 300 was a thing. Oh, dude. Yeah, which... and especially looking up how, like, you know, there are technically been boss songs in previous DDRs in the past, like Paranoia, I guess, was always kind of like the OG from, like, the very first mix. But Max was always the one that felt more like, no, this is the real boss song. This is the fastest thing ever. This is an impossibly high number. To the point where I think one thing I recall seeing about, like, the creation of that song was that the development team originally wanted it to be 400 BPM, but that was determined to be a speed that was too much, even for like the developers and the playtesters.
Yeah, you have to be able to finish it properly yourself before you inflict it on others. That's like a golden rule.
Yeah, and even the most dedicated, insane Bimani players, regardless of game, are still going to be like, it would still probably take them so long to ever get to that same level as the developers that you do kind of have to lower things somewhat down.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's like, yeah, when I like seeing that EX mode just like throws you into the deep end with like speeds that are higher than the fastest song in the main game, I was like, oh god, Max 300 Nightmares intensifying.
Yeah, how can I grow a third leg in order to hit some of these notes, because oh my god, my hips are not physically capable of moving that fast.
Even cheating my way with like, you know, using a controller or a keyboard like still is a fucking struggle, especially because of how like they have their one more extra stage system, you know? Like if you do goddamn near perfect on your 3 allotted stages, on your 3 allotted like music tracks, you get like the extra stage and then one more extra, and like that's how Max 300 was introduced, and it always has the extra stipulations of, okay, here's a really hard song, also we're going to apply a bunch of extra modifiers that you probably have not been using, such as reverse and ×2 speed. Have fun.
I know, I remember back when Stepmania first started being a thing. And,
the custom tracks.
And I knew a lot of people that were like, please, this is easy, and you see them and it's like their hands are moving so fast they're practically vibrating.
Yeah.
It's like your hand is actually going through the keyboard.
God damn it. So after another moment of Discord fuckery, get some energy drinks in me. I gotta survive this. We're 2 floors away from the end.
Yeah, I want to see anyone trying to play this. If you've got like a smartwatch or a Fitbit or anything, go through this and then post your heart rate during it. I want to see people have like heart attacks. Yeah,
that'd be something to see. God, Chai is just going to have like a fucking energy crash once he gets back to the hideout with all like these cans he's chugging.
I can't have an energy crash if all you drink is energy drinks. Know that from experience.
Yeah. It really does make it much more difficult though as you get to this point, like just trying to get like that meter like all the way filled up so you can end like the floor itself.
Yeah.
There is funny enough a challenge related to that, like that you might have seen as I was scrolling through the initial list, is that there is a challenge that requires you to like complete a floor after you have had like the BPM meter completely depleted, which comes entirely from, you know, like taking damage or otherwise just not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's a really silly challenge, but at least with the way that I've been like playing like this mode so far is that the goal has been to, like, it took a lot of routing, actually, between this and Power Up, Tower Up, which you'll see in the next video, to figure out, among each of the Modes 20 challenges, how many can I feasibly accomplish in a single run, like, starting from scratch. Because it's obviously designed in such a way that you're expected to play this multiple times, because there's always going to be some challenges that are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
With the first BPM Rush run that I did, followed by like the run that I show on video for Tower Up, Power Up, I basically get like more than half of like each mode's challenges knocked out in a single go. So I feel pretty good about that. It's been several months since I recorded it that I forget exactly how many like challenges it was that I unlocked. But I think with Power Up, Tower Up, it was so much that I think it was close to 3/4 of all challenges. It was like a pretty impressive feat, all things considered.
So with the challenges, like, are they essentially reset for every run, or is it like, okay, here's all the ones that you've done, here's what you've got to check off?
Yeah, it's basically you do the challenge and it's done because it's all working towards like filling up a percentage completion meter. Because each amount of points you get from those challenges unlocks like kind of the aforementioned rewards of like new cosmetic accessory options, new photo mode options, and more importantly, something I completely forgot to mention at the start. But this this update gives you 2 new Reverb special attacks that are unlocks for completing these challenges.
Again, the number of unlockables that this game has that aren't just DLC is astonishing.
Yeah,
especially in
most
this
of the DLC that is paid is just all entirely cosmetic stuff.
Yeah, cosmetic stuff are early unlocks. Like Capcom and Bamco are really bad for that these days.
Yeah, but at least with even then, like the early unlock stuff. Well, yeah, because people tried to make so much of a stink over DMC5 having you be able to buy red orbs or some shit, and it's like, but it's sort of thing where like, bro, not only did they do this for like DMC4 Special Edition, like it is the most half-hearted attempt they make at like including those, because you know it is entirely a decision that they agreed to at the behest of shareholders.
Really, the only problem I had with the what was it, 250,000 red orbs they gave you or something silly like that,
is that it's easy to make those already in the main game.
Well, it's the fact that I couldn't turn them off. Like, you start up in the game, you start with the red orbs already in your, sitting in your wallet. You can't just be like, okay, I need to press this in order to accept it. And I was like, I don't really, like, it's a really pointless pre-order bonus, really what it was, that you could buy later on, I think. Or I think you get it free with the game now. But I was like, yeah, I would prefer to do this legit from the start. Like, if it's a second or third playthrough, absolutely, But it just kind of felt pointless overall.
It just, but also it's still kind of, even then, talking about DMC5 in that way also reminds me of kind of the frustration of how Capcom has gone in this mindset that, like, they do not want to give you any way to easily access your save file for the purposes of, like, deleting or making a copy.
Yeah.
So, like, at some point, like, unless you're willing to dig through, like, your fucking system files, there is no way to ever get, like, a true fresh playthrough again. Not that I would really want to with DMC5 anymore, considering that, like, I have done enough playthroughs of DMC games starting from the beginning to know that, like, DMC1, I think, is the only one I ever want to actually do that with anymore. Because it actually feels designed around it.
See, every so often I keep going back to the third one and just going like, yep, I just feel like playing this from the start. And then I get about halfway through and inevitably I wind up getting bored and wandering off and doing something else.
Yeah, because then that means you have to grind for, like, increasing your style move level. Yeah. Because that was apparently a good idea.
And it's like, obviously, the special edition of 3, objectively the superior game, but there's still enough in there that I'm like, could we not just adjust this slightly? There's a couple of tweaks and it will be perfect, I promise.
On top of the fact that, like, there's also, like, the virtual save file, which is, like, basically its own separate game, so you have to basically build it up all over again. You can't even carry red orbs between them. At least 4 and 5 kind of got around that anyway. It's a shared resource pool. But it's like...
Basically what stopped me from doing a proper virtual playthrough was just the fact that I'm starting from the beginning all over again after finishing the game.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like enough of a reward,
Anyway, we survived hell. I'll take a B rank. I don't give a shit.
I imagine your hands were in blazing agony after that.
Hands, less so. Heart, definitely. But thankfully, the next mode after this is less stressful, but has its own set of challenges that make it, like, I'm not, no hyperbole, one of the best things that this game has to offer. Look forward to that in the next video. God, even watching this again, I can feel my heart rate rising again. What the fuck?